First off, it's a pleasure for me to be in front of you guys and just share my testimony. I think there's a scripture in the Bible, and it says, they shall overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Is that right? Yeah, and it's in Revelation. And I think I just want to thank everybody who's shared tonight, everybody who's come forth. I think it takes courage to share on something very intimate, something very personal. And I just want to thank you again, especially to Steve and Tracy. As you guys were sharing, it reminded me of a friend of mine who overdosed, and today is his third year. He overdosed today in 2023. And it just takes me back. His name was Ted Manzi, and, just reminded me of that. But yeah. My story starts here. I'm from a small country in the east of Africa by the name of Rwanda. And if anybody has heard of anything from Rwanda, I bet you guys have heard of, is it Hotel Rwanda or something along those lines? It's that there was a genocide in 1994 in Rwanda. And just in the 1994, there's a group of people who came to Rwanda and stopped the genocide. And among that group of people, my father was one of them. And he was part of the rebel that fought from 1990 to 1994 until they stopped the genocide. So coming from that, my dad had seen a lot of crazy things. And but out of that, he was a hero of my country. So fast forward around 1998, he met my mother, who was a refugee from 1990 to 1994 and came back to Rwanda. So she comes into a country which is poor. And in that, she's looking for a husband, a marriage, and of course, with that, there is interest of stability, interest of a man who can provide and a man who's able to be a secure place in terms of finances. And I forgot to say this, but my testimony, I named it the value of money. And then I'll fast forward 1 year from that. In 1990, around September, my parents married, and I was born in 2000, around April. So with that, I was born into a family that was not very wealthy, as just less than 10 years ago, my country was in a genocide. So the whole country is still kind of like on the up. We're trying to rebuild ourselves, but it's a poor country nonetheless. One very important thing is that I was born in a stable time when I feel like even though we were poor as a nation, my family was a little bit better off than many people. So I went to good schools. Coming up, when I was young, I remember going to schools, and I was seen as the guy from a wealthy family. And whenever I was sent home maybe for one day that, oh, you didn't pay tuition, I used to go home and just get my money. My mom would give me money right away, and I go back to school. And I knew that some kids could go home for a week, for a month, without ever finding tuition to go to school. So I understood the value of money from a young age, that money was pivotal in the society that I lived in. As I kept on growing up, I think by the time I was around 10 or 12, that's when my parents started having a lot of arguments, and back and forth, and it was all mainly because of money. It was because, hey, you're not around, and sometimes we're lacking here, we're lacking here, we're lacking here. As a child, you try to close that off, close your ears, but it will still sip through. A thing or two will sip through. But in all that, I knew that money was valuable. You have to have money. You have to be wealthy. You have to make ends meet. They took me to boarding school around grade 4, and then I was in boarding school from grade 4 until probably I was in grade 8. So during that time, there was still, every time I came home for vacation, there was still tension, but my parents tried to be very sharp, you know, keep the jacket on and make everything look good. Fast forward until we are in high school, I went to one of the best schools in my country, a very prestigious school, and then it was very expensive. I think when I came to Canada and I was like, oh, university tuition is this much, I was like, man, high school was much more expensive than that. So it was very expensive, the school I went to. But at that time, things were starting to get harder at home. My parents could not afford a lot of things, and then I remember sometimes I used to go home and stay there for not a day, not two, not three, a week, and then 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and then I'll go back to school because we did not have money. The value of money is being instilled in my heart day in and day out. And then as I move on forward, in my years until I graduated, 3 weeks became a month, stuck to a month, every semester, every other semester, until I graduated. And then by the time I graduated, my parents divorced. But at the core of it, there's a lot of things happening, but there's money also as one of the issues. And then by that time, I get to come to Canada, the country of where dreams come to fruition. And it's a country where also some of my friends from the U.S. will call it Canaan. It's a promised land. It's where you guys will have fruit and everything. Then when I came here, my parents had divorced, and then my mother was the breadwinner. As a single mom, I said, you know what? I'll try to help. I remember having, I think, 2 jobs. And I would go to one from 8 to 5 and do the other one from 6 to midnight. And then I did that. I was, I think, 18 until I was like 21. And then I did that, started school, still had a full-time job and was a full-time student, did that for 2 more years. So basically a total of, from the time I was 18 to the time I was 21, 22, I was always on that grind for money. And until this time, I do not know Christ. And then beginning of COVID, I quit my job, I go home. I think in the first few months, I start questioning, what am I looking for? Like, what's the point of this money? I know it's valuable, but I made this vow one time. I forgot to say this. When I was with my friends, when I was graduating high school, I made this vow. I said, whatever it takes in my life, I will make money. And I told them, whether it means I do whatever, you can imagine what I said. Anything, I'll make money. And then I came here, and then sitting in that room, I said, okay, is this what my life has come up to? Working 2 jobs, going to school, just for money? In that room, I started questioning my existence, my upbringing, my life, and it all summed up to, there is a God, and maybe he has an answer. There's more to life than just money. And then when I found Christ, he showed me that at the end of the day, at the end of everything, money will not matter. That I will leave it on earth, that when I die, this money will be like a paper, and my life, my story will be more valuable. And then Christ came into my life, opened up that part of my heart, and took it out. Just like trash, and threw it out. And now I sit here, and I sometimes wake up and I'm like, I don't know where I'll get money, but I know for sure I'll be all right because I have Christ. And there's a verse in Galatians chapter 5, and it says, I was reading it a few days ago, and it says, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. And that is the belief that I walk with, that Christ has set me free truly. And from that, I'm an addict right now and I'm still healing, but I know without a shadow of a doubt in my heart that Christ will set me free, and it will be for freedom that he has set me free. Thank you very much.